Sam had never been happier to get off work early. He had spent the entire day expecting to be stuck on the night shift, but a last-minute change meant he could leave by 11 p.m. With a smile on his face and a spring in his step, Sam drove home, eager to surprise his wife, Bella. He imagined her face lighting up when she saw him, and he couldn't wait to relax with her after a long day. Bella thought Sam wouldn't be back until the morning, so Sam rushed home with a little gift. On the way home, Sam bought a bottle of wine and a bunch of flowers. As Sam pulled into the driveway, a creeping sense of confusion settled in. Bella's car wasn't in the garage. The house was dark and everything felt off. Shrugging it off at first, he thought maybe she had gone out for a late-night errand. But as he stepped inside, the silence was unsettling. No lights, no sign of Bella anywhere. Where could she be? Sam muttered to himself, pulling out his phone. He called Bella, his fingers tapping impatiently on the counter as he waited for her to answer. Finally, she picked up. Sam? Bella's voice sounded flat, almost annoyed. Hey, Bella. Where are you? I got off work early, Sam said, his voice still filled with excitement. A long pause followed. Then, Bella's voice came through the line, cold and dismissive. I'm not coming home tonight. Sam blinked in confusion. What? What do you mean you're not coming home? Should I repeat myself? Bella snapped, irritation clear in her voice. You didn't understand the first time? Sam's heart began to pound. Bella, what's going on? Why aren't you coming home? I've got some urgent work to take care of, she replied coolly. Just don't bother me, okay? I'll be back tomorrow. Sam stood there, the phone pressed to his ear, feeling his stomach churn with unease. Something was wrong. Bella had never acted this way before, so cold, so dismissive. His initial confusion gave way to anger as he listened to her disinterested tone. Bella, this is ridiculous. Why are you being so disrespectful? Sam's voice rose with frustration, his hand gripping the phone tighter. We'll talk about this when you get home. But the line had already gone dead. As Sam stood in the empty house, the silence pressing in on him, his mind raced with questions. Bella's behavior wasn't just strange, it was insulting. Anger simmered just below the surface, and as he stared out at the empty driveway, he vowed to get to the bottom of whatever was going on. Something wasn't right, and Sam wasn't about to let it go without answers. The next morning, Sam sat at the kitchen table, his jaw clenched as he waited. He heard the familiar hum of Bella's car pulling into the driveway. His heart pounded as the door clicked open and she stepped in, looking as if nothing had happened. Bella gave him a brief glance, as if she hadn't left him with a million questions the night before. Morning, she said casually, her voice cool as she walked past him, heading straight for the stairs. I'm going to take a shower. Sam's chest tightened with frustration. She wasn't even going to offer an explanation. Not a word. The tension between them hung thick in the air, and as much as Sam wanted to confront her right then and there, he decided to hold off. Let her think everything was fine for a few minutes. He waited until he heard the water running upstairs. Then, driven by a gut instinct he couldn't ignore, Sam headed outside to check her car. Something wasn't adding up, and he wasn't the kind of man who would sit around, chewing on uncertainty. The car was still warm from her drive. Sam slipped inside, and his eyes immediately landed on the tablet she always used for navigation. His fingers shook slightly as he tapped through the recent destinations. One address stood out. She had spent the night on the other side of the city, parked outside a house in a quiet neighborhood. 251 Oakwood Drive. Sam stared at the screen, his heart thudding heavily in his chest. Why would she have been there all night? Before he could let his mind race too far, he popped open the glove compartment, not sure what he was even looking for. But what he found stopped him cold. An open box of condoms, missing just one. His mind reeled. They hadn't used condoms in years. There was no reason for this to be in her car. His hands felt numb as he closed the compartment. His stomach churned, and he felt a wave of betrayal wash over him. The dots were connecting in the worst possible way. He knew what Bella had been doing. Sam walked back into the house, the shower still running upstairs. He sat at the kitchen table again, staring blankly at the floor, waiting for her to finish. The minutes dragged by, but the moment she stepped out of the bathroom, he was ready. Bella came down the stairs, her wet hair wrapped in a towel, her face fresh and unconcerned. She glanced at him, but Sam's hard stare stopped her in her tracks. "What?" she asked, her tone already defensive. "We need to talk," Sam said, his voice low but firm. Bella rolled her eyes. "About what now?" "About where you were last night." His gaze was unflinching as he watched her, waiting for her reaction. He had her car keys in his hand. Bella's face darkened. "What the hell, Sam? You were going through my car? My stuff?" "Answer the question." Sam shot back, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Whose house is 251 Oakwood Drive? Why were you there all night?" Bella's eyes flickered with something guilt? Defiance? Sam couldn't quite tell, but she straightened her posture, crossing her arms. "It's Walter's house," she said flatly. Sam felt his heart plummet. "Walter? The guy from your office?" "Yeah, I stayed the night there." Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Sam clenched his fists, trying to keep his temper in check. "You think I'm an idiot, Bella? You spend the night at another man's house, I find condoms in your car, and you want me to believe nothing happened." Bella's eyes narrowed. "So what if I stayed there? It's not what you think." "Then what the hell is it?" Sam's voice rose with anger. "Tell me, is he your lover?" Bella exhaled slowly, her defensive tone softening. "No, Sam. Walter's not my lover." Sam glared at her, his patience wearing thin. "Then why were you at his house? And don't tell me some ridiculous lie. I deserve the truth." Bella finally dropped her arms, the irritation on her face shifting to something colder. "Look, I had some problems at work, okay? Walter helped me out. He covered for me in front of our bosses. If he hadn't, I might have lost my job. I went over there to thank him." "Thank him?" Sam's eyes burned with disbelief. "So, what? You slept with him out of gratitude?" Bella's expression remained unchanged. "It was my idea, Sam. Walter didn't ask for it. I knew he found me attractive, and I decided to give him something for helping me out." Sam's blood ran cold. "You gave him something? You mean you?" He stopped, struggling to find the words. "You slept with him as some kind of reward?" Bella's calmness was infuriating. "Yes," she said simply. "It wasn't cheating, Sam. It was just a transaction. A voluntary, honest deal. No feelings involved." Sam stared at her, utterly stunned. He had no words for how absurd, how cold this all sounded. You sold yourself for your career?" Bella looked at him without flinching. "I gave him a little happiness in return for helping me. That's all." Sam's heart ached as the reality of her words sank in. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Bella, how could you even think that was okay?" She shrugged. "It was a professional courtesy. He did me a favor, I did him one. That's it." Sam felt his world collapse around him. Before Sam comes up with an ingenious solution, please subscribe to the channel now. Sam stared at Bella, trying to process the absurdity of her words. She didn't flinch, didn't show a trace of remorse. "Sam," she continued, her voice unnervingly calm, "I don't think we should dwell on this. You may be upset by what you've learned, but you know that you're my husband, and I love you. One night, one mistake, shouldn't be the reason for a divorce or for ruining what we have." She said it as if she was smoothing over some minor inconvenience. Sam's mind spun, his heart racing with disbelief. She wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was acting like this was something they could sweep under the rug, like it didn't mean anything. "Let's just forget about it," Bella added, her tone breezy, as if she were suggesting they overlook an unpaid bill. Sam didn't respond. He couldn't. His mouth felt dry, his throat tight with the weight of what she had done. As he sat there in stunned silence, Bella's eyes drifted toward the bouquet of flowers sitting on the counter, the one Sam had picked up yesterday to surprise her after his early return from work. A smile spread across her face. "Wow, honey, are these flowers for me?" She walked over to them, admiring the vibrant petals like nothing was wrong. "You're so good to me." She didn't even wait for an answer. Instead, she turned to the bottle of wine he had brought home, popping it open with ease. She grabbed 2 glasses from the cabinet and poured them both a drink, acting as if everything was normal, as if she hadn't just admitted to cheating on him for some twisted version of career advancement. Bella handed him a glass, then raised her own in a casual toast. "Sam, I'm sorry. Maybe I acted stupidly, but let's just forget about it and move on." Her tone was light, almost playful, as she took a sip of her wine, watching him over the rim of the glass. Sam sat frozen, his mind reeling. He looked at her, trying to make sense of how easily she brushed everything aside, as if she believed her charm and sweet words could erase the betrayal. The calmness with which she manipulated the situation made his blood boil. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to pretend she was. This wasn't a mistake to her, it was just business as usual. Without a word, Sam drained his glass of wine and stood up. Bella gave him a curious look, but he couldn't stay in that room any longer. The air felt suffocating, thick with her lies. He needed to clear his head. Stepping outside, Sam inhaled deeply, the cool morning air biting at his skin. He paced across the porch, running a hand through his hair, his mind racing. Bella's betrayal had cut deep, but what stung even more was how little she seemed to care. She expected him to shrug it off like it was nothing, to keep playing the part of the loving husband while she carried on as if her actions had no consequence. But Sam knew better now. This wasn't a one-time slip. Bella's coldness, her calculated demeanor, it was clear to him that what she'd done wasn't a mistake at all. It was a choice. A deliberate, selfish choice. Bella might think she could walk all over him, make him the fool, but she had it all wrong. If she wanted to play games, he would play along for now, but on his terms. The more he thought about it, the clearer his plan became. Bella wanted to make him feel like an idiot? Fine. He would let her believe she had succeeded. But before he handed her those divorce papers, before she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, he would give her something to remember. A small, elegant revenge. Something she wouldn't see coming. As he stood there, watching the world wake up around him, Sam allowed himself the first small smile he'd felt in hours. Bella thought she had control. She thought she could manipulate him. But she was about to learn what it felt like to be played. It was time to talk to a lawyer. But first, he had a little surprise to plan. Sam stood on the porch, his plan beginning to form in his mind. Bella thought she had outsmarted him, but she had revealed her weakness, her career. That was the key. If her job meant so much to her that she would betray her marriage for it, then it was the perfect place to strike. But before Sam could set anything in motion, he needed an alibi, something airtight that would put him far from home, far from suspicion. He took a deep breath, then headed back inside, mentally shifting gears. He had to play the part of the forgiving husband for just a little longer. "Bella," he called as he walked into the kitchen, where she was casually sipping her wine. She looked up, her face softening as she noticed the change in his tone. He forced a small smile. "I've been thinking," Sam began, sitting back down across from her. "Maybe you're right. We've been through a lot together, and one mistake shouldn't tear us apart." Bella's face lit up slightly, her smile returning as if she hadn't expected him to come around so easily. "I knew you'd see reason, Sam. We're stronger than this." He nodded, pushing down the resentment bubbling inside him. "Let's move on. I don't want to lose what we've built." Bella reached across the table and took his hand, giving him a warm look, as though everything had fallen neatly back into place. But Sam was already thinking ahead. She was playing right into his hands. The next morning, Sam went to work, determined to make the next move. He headed straight to his boss's office, knocking on the door and stepping inside when John, his manager, waved him in. "Sam, what's up?" John asked, leaning back in his chair, clearly not expecting anything out of the ordinary. "John, I need a favor," Sam said, trying to sound casual. "I'd like to request a business trip to our production site in the next city. I think it's time for an inspection, and it would be good to get away for a bit." John raised an eyebrow. "A business trip? Now? You don't usually ask for that." Sam shrugged, trying to make it seem like no big deal. Yeah, I've been under a lot of stress lately, and I think it would do me good. Plus, I can take a look at how things are running at the production site. It's been a while since anyone went out there. John leaned forward, considering for a moment. You know, I've been meaning to send someone out there for an inspection. It could be a good opportunity for you. How long do you need? A week should be enough, Sam said, already picturing how this was going to play out. John nodded. All right, I'll get the paperwork sorted today. You'll have everything you need by the end of the week. Thanks, John. I really appreciate it. Later that day, Sam received all the official documents for the business trip, signed papers, company authorization, and everything to make his absence completely legitimate. This was the alibi he needed. When he returned home that evening, he made sure to show Bella the papers, casually handing them to her as they sat down for dinner. Looks like I've got a business trip lined up, Sam said. I'll be gone for a week, starting Monday. Bella glanced at the papers, her eyes scanning them before she handed them back. A week, huh? Well, I guess I'll miss you, but work is work, right? Exactly, Sam said, keeping his tone even. Just part of the job. Bella smiled, not a hint of suspicion in her eyes. She believed him completely, and that was exactly what Sam wanted. Over the next few days, Sam set the wheels of his plan in motion. With his alibi secured, he turned his attention to finding the perfect people to help him execute his revenge. After some searching, he connected with a group of young event planners who specialized in flash mobs and creative pranks. They were used to organizing all kinds of public stunts, and Sam's request intrigued them. Sam met with the group in a small cafe a few miles from his house. He laid out the details of what he wanted, a carefully orchestrated scene that would leave Bella rattled, confused, and humiliated, but nothing that would cross the line into anything truly harmful. It had to be elegant, subtle, but devastating. Okay, so you want us to stage a show? One of the organizers asked, intrigued but slightly confused. Sam nodded, his expression serious. Exactly. I need something that will make her think she's losing her mind. Something she'll never see coming. It needs to feel personal, like she's being exposed for who she really is, but in a way that makes her question everything. The group exchanged glances, already brainstorming ideas. We can do that, one of them said, smiling. We've done this sort of thing before, and trust me, if you want her to feel the heat, we can deliver. On Monday morning, Sam left for his business trip with all the official papers in order. Bella saw him off without much thought, believing that everything between them had returned to normal. She had no idea what was coming. Like any other day, Bella started her morning routine by heading to the cafe near her office for her usual coffee and croissant. The scent of fresh pastries filled the air as she stepped inside, the familiar atmosphere giving her a sense of comfort. She placed her order, waiting at the counter as the barista prepared her coffee. Just as Bella reached for her cup, a man in a sharp business suit walked up beside her. He glanced at her as if recognizing her from somewhere, then gave a slight, knowing smile. "Oh, it's you," he exclaimed, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "I recognized you. You're the same woman who, thanks her colleagues at work, in bed. How kind you are." Bella froze, the words hitting her like a slap. She stared at the man, her heart racing. "Excuse me," she stammered, utterly confused. The man chuckled, his expression serious, but laced with an unsettling amusement. "It's just so generous of you, really. Not many people would be that, giving to their coworkers." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Bella standing there, stunned. She stood in silence for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Surely, this was some kind of mistake. Maybe he had confused her with someone else. Shaking it off, she quickly grabbed her coffee and croissant and left the cafe, her mind spinning but determined to move on. The next day, Bella found herself back at the cafe, though the strange encounter from the previous morning lingered in her mind. She was trying to forget it. People made weird comments all the time. It didn't mean anything. As she approached the counter to place her order, an elderly gentleman, dressed impeccably, shuffled up beside her. His eyes widened as he saw her, and he turned to face her with a warm smile. "Oh, madam," he exclaimed, his voice full of admiration. "I've heard about your generosity. It's truly inspiring. Sharing your body for the sake of career success. What a real feat of sacrifice." Bella's face went pale. She blinked at the man, speechless, a pit forming in her stomach. What are you talking about?" she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. The elderly man waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so modest. Word travels fast about people like you. So selfless, so accommodating in the workplace. Quite the story." He smiled one last time before turning away. Bella's hands trembled as she picked up her coffee, her mind racing. This wasn't a coincidence. Twice now, strangers had approached her, making these awful, insinuating comments. But how? How did they know? She left the cafe in a daze, the weight of paranoia beginning to settle in her chest. As she walked to her office, her thoughts kept circling back to that night with Walter. No one else knew about it. No one except him. By the middle of the week, Bella was on edge, her nerves frayed. She had convinced herself that maybe the previous encounters were flukes, random, unconnected comments. But as she stepped into the cafe that morning, the familiar dread washed over her. She placed her order and waited, glancing around nervously. Just as the barista called her name, a young woman with a tray walked up beside her, balancing several drinks in her hands. She smiled brightly, as if recognizing Bella. "Oh, you're that fella, right?" the girl said, her voice cheerful. "My friend works with you and told me about how kind you are, especially to the men at the office." She winked playfully. "Thank you for being so caring." Bella's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed her coffee and bolted from the cafe, her mind now in a full-blown panic. This wasn't random anymore. Someone knew, and it was spreading. By the time she made it to her office, Bella could barely focus. Her phone sat heavy in her hand as she dialed Sam's number, needing some kind of reassurance, some explanation. "Sam, something weird is going on," she blurted out as soon as he picked up. "People, strangers, they're saying things about me. About that night. It's like they know, Sam. They know." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Sam spoke, his tone sharp and irritated. "Bella, why are you bringing this up again? I thought we agreed to forget about it." I know, but this is different," she stammered. "Someone's spreading rumors, I think. Or are you involved in this?" Her voice cracked, desperate for answers. Sam sighed, exasperated. "Bella, seriously? You think I'm behind this? I told you, I've moved on. Why can't you?" "Sam, please, Listen," Sam cut her off, his voice firm. "I'm busy with work. I don't have time for this nonsense." A moment later, the video call connected, and there Sam was, walking through the production floor, wearing a hard hat and safety vest. "See? I'm here, handling real work. I don't care about the past, Bella. Stop bothering me with this." Bella's heart sank as she watched him navigate the factory, his expression detached and focused on his job. I'm sorry," she whispered, feeling foolish. It's strange." "I've got to go," Sam said briskly. "Don't call me unless it's important." And with that, the call ended. Bella sat back in her chair, confusion swirling with fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that everyone knew, that somehow her secret had been exposed. And then it hit her like a cold wave, Walter. He was the only other person who knew. Could he be behind this? Or had he let something slip? As the pieces started to fall into place, Bella's panic deepened. She had to find out if Walter had betrayed her, but for now, she was trapped in a whirlwind of fear, unsure of whom she could trust, and desperately trying to maintain her crumbling facade. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Every part of her was frazzled by the strange encounters, the eerie feeling that her secret was no longer hers alone. She found Walter in his office, sitting at his desk, completely unaware of the storm about to hit him. Bella walked in, closed the door behind her quietly, and took a deep breath. Her voice was low, barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of her frustration and fear. "Walter," she hissed, leaning in close so no one outside could hear. "Did you tell anyone about our meeting?" Walter looked up, his expression confused. "What?" "Bella, what are you talking about?" Bella's eyes narrowed. "You know what I mean. About that night. Did you open your mouth and tell anyone?" Walter's face paled as he grasped what she was accusing him of. "No, of course not. I wouldn't. Don't lie to me." Bella snapped, her voice still low but filled with anger. "If management finds out, we'll be fired, Walter. You know the company's rules. No romantic relationships between employees." She took a step closer, her frustration boiling over. "Are you an idiot? Do you have any idea what could happen to both of us?" Walter, visibly shaken, raised his hands in defense. "Bella, I swear, I didn't tell anyone. I wouldn't risk my career over this. You know me better than that." Bella studied his face, searching for any sign of deceit, but all she saw was confusion and fear. Her anger simmered as she backed away, her heart pounding even harder. If Walter wasn't the one spreading rumors, then who was? She left his office, her thoughts spinning in a chaotic whirlwind of disbelief. The strange encounters, the comments from strangers, it didn't make any sense. She felt a cold shiver of dread. Was she losing her mind? Was someone playing a twisted game with her? The rest of the day dragged on, each minute weighed down by her growing paranoia. By the time she was ready to leave the office, Bella's nerves were frayed to the edge. She clutched a folder of documents to her chest as she stepped out of the building, lost in her thoughts. Suddenly, a young guy bumped into her hard, knocking the folder from her hands. Papers scattered across the pavement, fluttering in the breeze. "Oh, I'm so sorry," the guy said quickly, bending down to help her collect the papers. Bella knelt down beside him, her frustration barely held in check. "It's okay, it's my fault." "I wasn't paying attention," she said, her voice strained as she grabbed the last of the documents. "Thanks for helping." The guy smiled, his eyes glinting with a strange look. "No need for verbal thanks," he said smoothly, standing up and brushing himself off. "You can thank me by giving me a night with you, for saving your documents." Bella's heart skipped a beat, her eyes locking onto his in disbelief. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice shaky. The guy's grin widened. "I can see it in your eyes. You like to thank men, especially when it's career-related, right?" Bella's temper flared, and before she could stop herself, she threw the folder at him. "You sick bastard!" she shouted, her voice trembling with fury. "I won't leave a wet spot of you." The guy laughed, a sinister chuckle that sent chills down her spine. Without another word, he turned and sprinted down the street, disappearing around the corner before she could even think to chase him. Breathing heavily, Bella stood frozen in place, her body trembling with a mix of rage and fear. She felt like the ground was slipping beneath her feet. Everywhere she turned, someone was reminding her of that night, mocking her, as if the whole world had found out her secret. That evening, Bella sat in her dimly lit living room, a glass of wine clutched tightly in her shaking hands. She had barely touched her dinner, her stomach in knots, her mind replaying the events of the last few days over and over again. Her heart raced, and no amount of wine seemed to calm her nerves. She felt like she was unraveling. Nothing made sense anymore. Who were these people, and how did they know? Or worse, was she losing her mind? The more she thought about it, the more she wondered if she was imagining it all, if the guilt of what she'd done with Walter was driving her to paranoia. Her hands trembling, Bella grabbed her phone and opened the browser, her fingers hovering over the screen for a moment before she typed in a search, "psychotherapist near me." As the list of names appeared on the screen, she stared at it blankly, the realization sinking in. She needed help. Either someone was playing an elaborate and cruel game with her, or her mind was betraying her. Either way, she knew one thing for sure: she was teetering on the edge of something she couldn't control. By Friday morning, Bella was on edge, her nerves frayed from the week's strange encounters. Determined to avoid any more awkward or humiliating situations, she made a decision. No coffee stop, no lingering on the street. She headed straight for the office, hoping that throwing herself into work would calm her down. She needed to forget the past few days and focus. Maybe, just maybe, this day could pass without incident. By the time the other employees started trickling into the office, Bella was already at her desk, furiously typing away. As the hours passed, a strange sense of calm washed over her. For the first time in days, she felt like she was regaining control. The office buzzed with the usual morning chatter, and Bella breathed a small sigh of relief. Finally, she thought, some peace. But that peace didn't last long. About an hour later, just as she was starting to feel normal again, the office door swung open and a courier walked in, holding a massive bouquet of red roses. The sight immediately drew attention, heads turning from all corners of the office. The courier, seemingly oblivious to the tension in the air, made his way to the middle of the room and loudly announced, "Delivery for Bella." The words hit her like a shockwave. Bella's stomach twisted into knots as she stood up, already feeling the heat of everyone's gaze. Several of her colleagues, curious and amused, gathered around to see what was happening. Bella approached the courier, her heart racing. "I didn't order anything," she said sharply, trying to keep her voice steady. "Why do you think these flowers are for me?" The courier gave her an innocent shrug, then pulled out a small card tucked between the roses. Clearing his throat, he began reading the note aloud, his voice loud enough for everyone in the office to hear. "For the sexiest and most divine Bella, who made me happy that magical night. Signed, Walter." The room went silent for a split second before the laughter and whispers erupted around her. Bella felt the blood drain from her face as she stood there, frozen in horror. She could hear the stifled giggles of her coworkers, the murmured comments, the judgmental eyes scanning her from head to toe. It was a nightmare come to life. Without thinking, Bella lunged forward and knocked the bouquet out of the courier's hands, sending roses scattering across the floor. "What the hell is this?" she screamed, her voice trembling with fury and humiliation. "What kind of disgusting joke are you playing?" Her colleagues, some still laughing, looked on in shock as Bella's outburst continued. She couldn't stop herself, her nerves had finally snapped. People whispered, exchanged glances, and a few even tried to calm her down, but Bella was beyond reasoning. "Bella, relax," one of her coworkers said, though the smirk on her face made it clear she wasn't taking any of this seriously. But to Bella, it was a nightmare. And the fact that Walter wasn't even there to explain himself only made it worse. In an evil coincidence, Walter was absent because he had to go to another office at the boss's behest. As Bella tried to catch her breath, shouting obscenities at the courier, who was now frantically backing away, the door to the boss's office flew open. Her boss, Mr. Harris, strode out, his face a mix of confusion and concern. He took one look at the chaos, Bella screaming, the bouquet on the floor, and the courier practically running for the exit, and quickly stepped into the middle of it. "What the hell is going on here?" Mr. Harris demanded, his eyes darting from Bella to the scattered flowers and the note, which he bent down to pick up. He quickly scanned the words on the card, his face hardening with each passing second. "Bella," he said sternly, holding the note up, "what have you done? What's going on, and how are we supposed to understand this?" Bella, still shaking with anger, couldn't seem to form a coherent response. Her mind was a blur of rage, fear, and shame. Her coworkers were still watching, their whispers growing louder. "Bella," Mr. Harris pressed, his voice growing sharper, "did Walter really send you these flowers? Are you two in a relationship? You're married, Bella, and you know the company policy." "No, no," Bella screamed, her voice cracking. "This is all a setup. Some kind of sick joke." "I would never," but the words caught in her throat, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. Mr. Harris eyed her carefully, his brow furrowed in concern and suspicion. "Bella," he said slowly, "you're not making any sense. You're acting irrational. If Walter's involved in this, I need to know now. Otherwise, you're putting your entire career at risk." Bella's heart raced as she looked around the room, the judgment, the laughter, the suspicion all closing in on her like walls. "It's not true," she shouted again, but her voice was weaker now, less convincing. I don't know what's happening. Someone is trying to ruin me." Mr. Harris took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain his patience. "Bella, you need to calm down." Bella's eyes darted wildly around the room. Her colleagues stared at her with a mix of amusement and pity, some trying to suppress their laughter, others exchanging knowing glances. It was too much. She couldn't take it anymore. Mr. Harris stood in the center of the chaotic scene, watching as Bella trembled with rage and frustration. He could see she was on the edge of a breakdown, her face pale and her hands shaking. He knew he had to diffuse the tension, not just for Bella's sake, but for the entire office, which was now buzzing with whispers and exchanged glances. With a forced smile, Mr. Harris raised his voice, trying to sound casual. "All right, everyone, enough staring. Let's get back to work." "What kind of joke is this anyway?" he said, trying to inject some lightness into the situation. His cheerful voice, deep and playful, attempted to soften the mood. "Bella, calm down," he added, still smiling. "Why don't you take a couple of days off? We'll figure this out. You and Walter can take a lie detector test. If it'll clear things up, no one will doubt your integrity. Trust, but verify, right?" He chuckled, clearly not serious, hoping to break the tension and brush the whole thing off as a misunderstanding. But what Mr. Harris didn't realize was that Bella was already far beyond reason. At his words, something in Bella snapped. "Yes, I slept with Walter," she screamed, her voice raw with fury and humiliation. The entire office went dead silent. "I rode him like a young stallion, and I enjoyed every second of it. And all of you, you're just a bunch of miserable, nosy bastards trying to stick your noses into someone else's life." Gasps echoed through the room, and people exchanged wide-eyed looks. Bella's face flushed as she realized what she had just said, but the dam had already burst. Tears welled up in her eyes as she grabbed her purse in a wild rush and ran toward the door, her sobs filling the otherwise silent office. As Bella stormed out, she merely collided with Walter, who had just returned from his assignment. He was clueless about what had just transpired, his usual confident posture faltering when he saw the state Bella was in. "Tell them, Walter," Bella shouted, her voice thick with emotion. "Tell them how we were tumbling around at your place. They're all dying to know the details because their lives are boring and gray, stuck in this office." Walter froze, his face draining of color. His knees trembled slightly as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. His wide eyes darted around the room, taking in the shocked faces of their coworkers. Bella's words hung in the air like a thick, suffocating cloud. "Bella, why did you tell everyone about this?" "It was our secret," Walter asked weakly, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked utterly lost, as if the ground had been ripped out from under him. "So, it's true?" Mr. Harris asked, his voice heavy, now devoid of any humor. His eyes locked on Walter, who stood there like a deer caught in headlights. "There was something going on between you two?" Walter looked down at the floor, his face ashen, as he mumbled, "I didn't tell anyone. I swear I didn't." Mr. Harris pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling heavily. "Well, that's it then," he muttered, his voice barely loud enough to be heard by the closest onlookers. He looked at Walter with a mixture of disappointment and frustration. "Walter, we need to have a conversation." Now, as Walter followed Mr. Harris into his office, the rest of the staff erupted into a quiet murmur, exchanging glances and hushed comments about what had just unfolded. Bella's breakdown, her shocking confession, and Walter's stunned reaction had thrown the office into complete disarray. Sam returned home on Saturday, feeling a mix of satisfaction and curiosity. He had orchestrated part of Bella's downfall, but he had no idea how far things had spiraled out of control while he was away. The moment he walked into the house, the air felt heavy, thick with tension. He found Bella in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a glass of wine clutched in her trembling hand. Her eyes were wild, a mix of depression and madness. The woman who once carried herself with such confidence now looked completely broken. Sam could sense that something terrible had happened. The moment Bella saw him, her expression twisted into fury. "You," she screamed, rising to her feet. "You did this. You set me up, didn't you? You planned all of it." Sam took a step back, raising his hands in a gesture of defense. "Bella, calm down. What are you talking about?" "I didn't do anything." But Bella wasn't listening. She advanced on him, her eyes filled with rage and desperation. "You wanted to ruin me. You wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone." "Bella," Sam said gently, trying to keep his voice calm, "I'm your husband. I wouldn't do that to you. I didn't arrange anything. Let's just talk, okay?" Bella's hands shook violently as she stood inches from him, her face pale with anger. And then, without warning, she lunged toward the counter, grabbing a large kitchen knife. She turned back to him, holding the blade in her hand, her eyes crazed. "I'll make you pay for this," she screamed, waving the knife toward Sam. "You think you can destroy me and walk away?" Sam's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't lose his composure. He slowly backed away, pulling his phone from his pocket as he dialed 911. "Bella, put the knife down," he said as calmly as possible, his voice low but firm. "You're not thinking straight. You need help." Bella continued to rant, her grip on the knife tightening. "You ruined my life, Sam. You made me look like a fool. You set me up, you monster." Within minutes, the police arrived, bursting through the door and quickly assessing the situation. Bella, still holding the knife, was screaming incoherently as they gently disarmed her and led her away. Her face was a mask of pure anguish, and her words had descended into a stream of jumbled nonsense. As Bella was taken away in handcuffs, Sam felt a strange mixture of pity and relief. She wasn't in her right mind anymore. It was over. At the hospital, the doctors diagnosed Bella with a severe nervous breakdown. She was placed under temporary psychiatric care, and Sam knew this was his opportunity to finally end things. While Bella was undergoing treatment, Sam took the steps he had been planning for weeks. He quietly withdrew a large sum of money from their joint account, moving it into a private one. With the help of his lawyer, he drafted divorce papers, preparing for the final stage of his revenge. When Bella returned home, she found the house empty and a stack of papers waiting for her on the kitchen counter. Sam had moved out and left no explanation other than the divorce documents and a note telling her not to contact him. The moment Bella realized what was happening, her anger flared once more. Days later, Bella contacted Sam, furious over the missing money. She accused him of stealing from her, but Sam was ready. He met her face to face, his expression calm but steely. "I didn't steal anything, Bella," Sam said, his voice cold. "But I'll tell you this, our house cameras have footage of you attacking me with a knife. If you want to play this game, I can easily press charges for attempted murder." Bella's face went white as she realized the gravity of what he was saying. Sam stepped closer, his tone dripping with icy resolve. "You've gone crazy, Bella. You did all of this yourself. I tried to live like you wanted, like nothing had happened, but you destroyed it with your lies and your insanity." Bella's anger turned to panic, but she knew Sam had her cornered. You can't do this," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Oh, I can," Sam replied, his voice steady. "And I already have. You're not getting a dime from me. You've lost everything. And if you push me any further, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what happened." With no options left, Bella signed the divorce papers. She lost her job, her reputation was ruined, and Walter was fired as well. Their office scandal had spread. Meanwhile, Sam walked away, free from the nightmare Bella had created, his revenge complete. This was Sam's harsh, calculated revenge. He had been patient, he had played the role, and now Bella's own actions had brought her downfall. If you liked the story, hit the subscribe button right now. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Have a great day and good luck.